Good day, everyone. Welcome back to Dr. Burns' TOEFL Show. Today, we are going to work on TOEFL Build-a-Sentence practice questions. These questions test your grammar knowledge, but they also test your speed. You usually have only 30 to 45 seconds per question, so there is not much time to think. To answer them all successfully, you need to understand the grammar rules and quickly recognize the correct structure. Today's lesson will help you increase your speed by showing you the common patterns in TOEFL Build-a-Sentence questions. Think of these as grammar clues for speed. Clue 1. Find the main subject and the main verb. To build a correct sentence, you must first identify the main subject and the main verb. Subjects are usually nouns or pronouns, but those words can also appear as objects in a sentence. So simply seeing a noun does not automatically mean it is the subject. Verbs are usually fewer in number, so they are often easier to identify. The main verb usually shows tense or number agreement, often with auxiliary verbs such as do, does, did, is, or was. These words are very helpful clues when you are trying to identify the main verb. For example, does, we, anybody, are, know, where. The word does is an auxiliary verb. It tells us something important. The subject must be singular. So anybody must be the subject. Also, know must be the main verb because the pattern does plus base verb is correct. So we get, does anybody know?
Clue 2. Watch for indirect questions. This leads us to the second clue. Words such as wonder, know, think, tell me, and interrogative words like who, what, which, as well as interrogative adverbs like when, where, and how, and conjunctions like if or whether, are signals that an indirect question may appear. Indirect questions are a favorite structure used by TOEFL question writers. Let's look again at our example. We have, does anybody know? Know what? The original question is, where are we? This question can be embedded into another sentence as a clause, especially as the object of the verb know. Grammatically speaking, a question can be embedded into another sentence as a noun clause. When this happens, we call it an indirect question, and it must follow the normal subject plus verb order. Compare the two. Direct question, where are we? Indirect question, where we are. So the final sentence becomes, does anybody know where we are? Clue 3. Understand noun clauses. A noun clause is very important grammar for the TOEFL because it can do everything a noun can do, but it looks like a complete mini sentence. For example, that's who she is. Here, who she is a subject complement. A noun clause can also be the object of a preposition. For example, I am indecisive about how I feel. I was super excited about how it went. Some WH words that form noun clauses, especially what, which, and how, can take their own nouns or adjectives. For example, do you know what ice cream you like? Can you tell me which restaurant we should go to? The word how is even more versatile. It can appear by itself to ask about method. Do you know how she did it? Or it can combine with other words such as how many, how much, how long. These combinations ask about quantity or duration. For example, do you know how much I sacrificed? Do you know how many restaurants Chili's has? Let's see how long you last. As you can see, noun clauses are very versatile, and they can make build-a-sentence tasks more challenging. Whenever you see them, try to memorize the sentence patterns. This will help you increase your speed because you will immediately recognize the structure in the word jumble. I guarantee that you will see noun clauses again and again in TOEFL Build-a-Sentence questions, so it is very important to master them.
Clue 4. Complete the verb. Once you figure out the subject and the main verb, the next step is to complete what the verb requires. Different verbs require different kinds of complements, which creates different sentence patterns. In English, we can think of 5 main types. First, some verbs do not need an object at all. For example, verbs like go or sleep. Examples: I went to school. I slept well. Here, to school and well are modifiers. They add information, but they are not essential to the sentence. Second, some verbs are called linking verbs because they connect the subject with a subject complement. In these sentences, there is an equality relationship between the subject and the complement. Examples: I am a boy. I equals boy. The door is open. Door equals open. A subject complement can be a noun or an adjective, and it is essential to complete the meaning. Now let's look at the verb get. This verb can take one object. Example: did you get it? Many verbs like this can also take 2 objects. Example: I will get you something to eat. Here, you equals indirect object, something equals direct object. Let's look at another example. Would you send me money? Here, me equals indirect object, money equals direct object. The famous line from the movie Jerry Maguire, "Show me the money," is this same pattern with 2 objects. You should also know that verbs with 2 objects can often change to a structure with 1 direct object by using a prepositional phrase for the indirect object. Example: send me money can also become send money to me. Finally, there are verbs that require an object plus an object complement. This is similar to linking verbs because the object equals the object complement. Example: I made you rich. Here, you equals rich. English verbs can be very flexible and can appear in more than one structure. For example, the verb hold. It can appear with no object, hold on, meaning wait. It can take one object, hold classes, or it can take an object plus an object complement, hold them accountable. Here, them equals object, accountable equals object complement. The correct pattern often depends on meaning. For example, I made you a boss. You equals a boss, so a boss is an object complement. But in this sentence, I made you a house. Here, you does not equal a house, so you is an indirect object and a house is the direct object. The meaning is similar to I made a house for you. Clue 5. Passive voice. Verbs that take objects can often be changed into the passive voice using the pattern be plus past participle. Example: active: I hold class. Passive: the class is held. Clue 6. Verb phrases. You should also recognize verb phrases such as happen to know, end up going. These combinations often appear in TOEFL questions. Finally, Clue 7. Determiner and noun agreement. For example, words like many and a few go with plural nouns. Words like much and a little go with uncountable nouns. Examples: many students, a few books, much time, a little money. These are the grammar clues you need to answer today's questions. All right, let's start practicing.
Question 1.
Your presentation yesterday was impressive. Thanks.
Words given are you want, of it, me, you, to send, do, a copy.
Okay, there's a question mark and no WH question word, so this is a yes-no question. Do is the only auxiliary verb here, so we use inversion that begins with do, followed by subject-verb order. So we start with do you want? Now want what? Want can take just an object or an object plus an object complement. For example, I want you. I want you to love me. The first one is sentence pattern 3. Quick grammar point. Want takes a to infinitive as its object, not a gerund. So, I want to go, tick. I want going, X. The second example, I want you to love me, is sentence pattern 5. Now, let's examine the given words to see which pattern is needed. The candidates for the complement of want are me, you, to send, and a copy. We need to use all of them, so the sentence cannot be sentence pattern 3. This clearly makes it sentence pattern 5, an object plus an object complement, where the complement is the to infinitive to send. But which word is the object, me, you, or a copy? First, do you want you to send does not make sense. How about do you want a copy to send? That's not grammatical either, because a copy cannot perform the action send. It would have to be in the passive voice. Do you want a copy to be sent? Therefore, me is the only correct option as the object. Do you want me to send? Now, send is one of those verbs that requires two objects, a direct object and an indirect object. This is called sentence pattern 4. We already covered all of these 5 sentence patterns in an earlier video, so make sure you know these sentence patterns. Okay, where were we? I said send requires pattern 4. What do we have left? Of it, you, a copy. The indirect object should be you. The direct object should be a copy. Of it modifies a copy. So the final sentence is, do you want me to send you a copy of it?
Question 2. I wish I hadn't missed the conference last week.
Words given are where, don't, know, the sessions, of, to get. It is a question, so we need inversion. There are 2 possible words to begin, where and don't. Where doesn't work because a verb should follow, but the next word is you, so don't is the only choice. After that, a base verb should follow, and know is the only option. So the sentence must begin with, don't you know? Know what? We need an object. Because we have where, we know that the object of know will be an indirect question. So far, we have seen indirect questions expressed as clauses. The subject could be the recordings or the sessions, but there is no main verb available to use in a full clause. Now we have a new grammar fact you need to know. The WH word plus to infinitive structure. For example, what to do, where to go, how to fix. This structure is a concise way to form indirect questions or instructions. Think of it as replacing longer clauses. For example, I don't know what I should do, to I don't know what to do. Can you tell me how I can get there, to can you tell me how to get there? The WH word plus to infinitive structure is a noun phrase and can act as the subject, object, or complement in a sentence. Where to go is the question. Subject. The question is where to go. Subject complement. He asked me where to go. Direct object. With that grammar fact, let's look at the remaining words. The recordings, of the sessions, to get. Where to get works perfectly. Get what? The recordings make sense, but getting the sessions does not. So we have where to get the recordings of the sessions. Now we add of the sessions, which works well. The sessions refers back to the conference. Dr. Burns has several videos on how to use the correctly. The is the most used word in English, and for non-native speakers, it is often the most challenging word to master. Make sure you understand when to use the, to refer back to something mentioned earlier, like the sessions, meaning the conference sessions, and when a modifier gives identification, like the recordings of the sessions. So we now have where to get the recordings of the sessions. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, don't you know where to get the recordings of the sessions? 3. The new yoga class was very relaxing. Are, a few, classes, wonder, I, held, if. There is no question mark, but words like wonder and if tell us we are dealing with an indirect question. Classes cannot wonder, so the sentence must begin with, I wonder if. The remaining words are, a few, classes, held. Classes is the only candidate for the subject of the if clause. A few acts as a determiner, specifically called an indefinite quantifier. A few can only modify a countable plural noun, so we have a few classes. Determiners like articles, possessives, and quantifiers have a specific word order. Make sure you know how to place them correctly by watching Dr. Burns' free lecture on determiner order. It's a strong candidate topic for word order questions. Since classes as a non-animate concept cannot perform the action of holding, the verb must be in the passive form, are held. So the indirect question clause becomes if a few classes are held on Saturdays. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, I wonder if a few classes are held on Saturdays. 4. We had a blast at the national park yesterday. First, notice the question mark and the words no and whether signal that the sentence is a question containing an indirect question. Since there is no WH word, this is a yes-no question which requires inversion, beginning with the auxiliary verb. Based on meaning, the sentence should begin with does. Does requires a third-person singular subject, and anybody is the only suitable candidate. So the sentence must begin with, does anybody know whether? There is no inversion after whether. The remaining words are it, is open, they. Within the whether clause, the subject is it and the verb is open. They is not used in this sentence. Adding the time expression gives whether it is open all year long. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, does anybody know whether it is open all year long? 5. The film festival this weekend was amazing. They, if, are, can, find out, planning, another one. There is a question mark and no WH, so this is a yes-no question, which requires inversion. The auxiliary verb can should begin the sentence. So the sentence must begin with, can we? Next, we need a main verb, which is find out. Find out what? This introduces the indirect question clause, which begins with if. Now, let's build the if clause. In indirect questions, there is no inversion after if. The remaining words are they, are, planning, another one. Because of the verb are, the subject must be plural, so we use they, referring to the people who organize the film festival. This is similar to examples in a previous lecture, where they referred back to people working at a restaurant. The restaurant is highly rated. Do you know if they have a vegetarian dish? The verb phrase is are planning. Planning what? Another one is the object of planning. So the embedded clause becomes if they are planning another one. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, can we find out if they are planning another one? Question 6. Words given are why, each, tell me, how long, was, workshop, session, could. There is a question mark and two WH words, why and how long. So is this a WH question sentence? Let's look at the blanks. If the sentence begins with why or how long, the sentence would require inversion, meaning a verb must follow the WH word. But the next word in the blanks is you, so the sentence cannot begin with either WH word. This makes could the only option to begin the sentence. So the sentence begins with could you. After the could you, a base verb should follow, and tell me is the only option. Grammar fact. Tell follows sentence pattern 4, which requires an indirect object and a direct object. Here, me is the indirect object, and the direct object should be a WH clause leading the indirect question. So after tell me, we expect a WH clause as the object. The two WH words provided are why and how long. The remaining words are each, workshop session, was. Let's order these first and decide which WH word is needed. Session is a singular countable noun and cannot be used without a determiner. Each is a determiner that modifies only singular countable nouns. So we have each workshop session was. This is the subject of was. So we have each workshop session was. Was what? Was needs a subject complement. Why is an adverb and cannot serve as a complement. How long, on the other hand, works because long can act as the complement. The session was long, and how modifies long. So the indirect clause is led by how long. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, could you tell me how long each workshop session was? The new art exhibit at the museum is stunning. Would to know how I, you, happen, can, get. With I, you, would, and can get, it's a little challenging to see what the sentence is about. So let's first see which word can begin the sentence. Because of the question mark, the only two candidates are would and how. Let's test whether how works. How needs inversion, meaning a verb must come after it. The only option is the auxiliary verb would, then the subject you, and then the main verb happen. Happen to is a fixed expression, so we get, how would you happen to know? Now know what? The only options left are I and can get, but neither can work as the object of know. So the sentence cannot begin with how. Now let's try would. Would also requires inversion, and the rest follows similarly to the how test. So we have, would you happen to know? Next, know what. The object of know can begin with how, forming a WH clause. The remaining words go in normal order. How I can get exhibit information. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, would you happen to know how I can get exhibit information? 8. Let's go to that new gym this afternoon. This is an easy question. We have the usual suspect, a question with an indirect question structure. Do you know if? The indirect question is also straightforward. It is usually crowded at this time. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, do you know if it is usually crowded at this time? Question 9. Words given are you, how, heard, it, they filmed, any, details, have. Words that can begin the sentence are how and have, with have being the auxiliary verb for have heard in the present perfect tense. Let's first see if how works. How needs inversion, giving how have you heard about? So far, so good. Now we need an object for about. About what? The remaining words are it, they filmed, any details. But we cannot fill all the blanks correctly with this structure, so how does not work at the beginning. So let's try using have instead. Have you heard? Grammar. Here can be both a transitive and intransitive verb. I heard the news, transitive verb. I heard well, intransitive verb. I heard about the news, intransitive verb. Here we have one blank after have you heard, so we can add the object of here. Any details is a good choice. So we have you heard any details? Now, details about what? We have an indirect question beginning with how. After how, the subject and verb appear in normal statement order. About how they filmed. Filmed needs an object, which is it. Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, have you heard any details about how they filmed it? Question 10. I'm applying for a position at that new technology hub. Words given are do, they, have, how many, you, open, positions. We have the usual suspect here. Do you know? Know what? An indirect question led by how many. So we have, do you know how many? The remaining words are they, have, open positions. With these words, they have open positions looks perfect. But remember the grammar rule for how many. How many is a quantifier adjective phrase that modifies plural countable nouns, so the plural noun must come immediately after how many. Here, that gives us how many open positions. After that, we use normal word order in an indirect question. They have. In a direct question, the order would be how many open positions do they have? But in an indirect question, we keep normal word order. How many open positions they have? Putting everything together, the complete sentence is, do you know how many open positions they have? That's it for now. If anything wasn't clear, let us know. Don't forget to check out Dr. Burns' TOEFL courses covering all 4 sections. Taking the exam soon? Enroll in a one-on-one coaching session to get personalized feedback on your essays and speaking, from pronunciation and grammar to topic development, so you know you're on the right track. Learn more and sign up at www.nanheburns.com.